Even though Francis Ngannou is or was the UFC heavyweight champion, he's become an MMA free agent according to new rumors. To everybody's knowledge, his contract was supposed to expire by the end of 2022, so it sort of makes sense. Nobody really knows if he'll renew his contract, or even stick with the UFC for that matter. Keep watching to find out. First off, could Ngannou be saying goodbye to the UFC? To be honest, it wouldn't really be fair to the UFC because Ngannou has been in the UFC for the last 7 years and has a 12-2 record there as the number 5 ranked pound-for-pound fighter. He even defeated Stipe Miocic in the second round at UFC 260 to win the heavyweight title. Not to mention, he defended his title like another day at the park at UFC 270 against Cyril Gane, arguably one of the best UFC fighters out there today. Although it's unclear if the heavyweight champion will be saying goodbye to Dana White's organization for sure, the consequences of his probable exit are obvious, which is sad, especially considering that the UFC had hoped to schedule a championship match between Ngannou and Jon Jones at UFC 285 in March. Next up, what reason could he have to leave? Francis Ngannou made no attempt to hide his disappointment with his UFC contract. The heavyweight champion vented his disappointment in a string of tweets in August 2022, where he claimed he had been denied $1 million in sponsorship money by the UFC. Ngannou stated that he wants to be able to take part in boxing contests, as well as see an increase in some income from his upcoming contract. He has previously hinted at a fight with heavyweight champion Tyson Fury in mixed martial arts as well. It's unclear if Ngannou will quit the UFC for sure, and if so, what his next course of action will be. For now, we just have to wait for his next move. Until then, it's all just speculation. Moving on, what does Dana White have to say? As far as Dana is concerned, Francis Ngannou has been stripped of his title because he didn't want to renew his contract, but that could change if Ngannou changes his mind and decides to sign a new contract. Even though Dana is saying Ngannou is not part of the UFC officially, he could still change his mind. Dana even stated publicly that Francis Ngannou was being offered more money than any other fighter in UFC history, but apparently that wasn't enough for him. That sounds kind of fishy though, because Dana has become notorious for underpaying UFC fighters. Even Jake Paul spoke up about it once in an effort to lure more fighters into his own fighting league. It makes sense for Ngannou to not make a new deal with the UFC, because he's basically trying not to take any risks, since he could literally fight easier opponents in another league and make more money in the process. White claimed that the UFC and Ngannou had been negotiating a new contract for the greater part of the previous 2 years, but they were never able to come to an agreement on the terms. Surprise, surprise! Dana was probably offering to feed him crumbs in exchange for blood, sweat, and tears. Ngannou has already stated multiple times that any new contract should give him the chance to consider other sports, such as a potential career in boxing, after he teased the idea of facing heavyweight champion Tyson Fury. White thought that Ngannou wouldn't stay even if he faced an opponent like Jon Jones, who is going to be his next opponent, and it seems like he was right. Let's talk about how hard Dana tried to make him stay. He claims that he tried his hardest to make the Jon Jones fight happen and to give him the fight, but he believes that there are better options with weaker competition outside of the UFC for Ngannou, or so he claims. Let's face it, Ngannou would have faced off against probably the best fighter in history and would have become the highest paid heavyweight ever, but why take the chance of competing against a monster like Jones when he could earn more money elsewhere like the PFL? Francis Ngannou clearly knows what he wants, and he's finally being smart with his life choices. Good on him. After Ngannou was ruled out, the UFC immediately scheduled Jones vs. Gane, which will happen at UFC 285 on March 4 in Las Vegas. With Ngannou gone, the heavyweight title is back on the line for the best pound-for-pound heavyweight fighter. Overall, Dana White respects Ngannou's decision and has even said that he loved having Ngannou in the UFC during all those years and all those epic fights. He sends him his best wishes, and most importantly, despite everything, Dana is okay with Ngannou moving on. Now for Jon Jones' fight with Cyril Gane. While we were busy stuffing Christmas dinners and chugging eggnog during the holidays, Jones has been hard at work at the gym, preparing for a title fight. Of course, he was putting in extra effort to go up against Francis Ngannou, but with him out, his next opponent, Cyril Gane, is definitely going to be getting the fiercest version of Jon Jones we've ever seen before. Although Jones has been getting ready to switch to heavyweight for over 3 years, he hasn't made his debut in the division yet, so all this is going to be very new to him. The former pound-for-pound #1 hasn't competed since defending winning the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship against Dominic Reyes in February 2020. He even gave a clue about his return by tweeting, "Champion 2023." When Gane faced Ngannou in January of last year, he lost the chance to claim the heavyweight title because he fell prey to a decision against his old training partner. Ngannou underwent successful knee surgery after sustaining ligament damage to his knee during the fight, but his ongoing contractual dispute with the UFC seems like it's forced him to surrender his title and never compete again for the organization. Gane should be super excited because this gives him another shot at the title, but we doubt he'd be able to take on Jon Jones now, considering the kind of beast he's become. Just look at his muscle definition and size. Moving on, who would win between Gane and Jones? Let's be real. When Jones transitions to heavyweight, there isn't a harder opponent for him to face than Cyril. It's an epic matchup between a fighter with an insane amount of experience versus a fighter who's new and doesn't have a lot of fight IQ. If an expert had to guess who'd win between the two, they'd choose Jones, mostly because of his fighting IQ and his ability to get out of sticky situations. There's no doubt that Jon's presence is unsettling, even for a heavyweight, because he looks more ready than ever to take on bigger opponents. Since Jon Jones is coming from the light heavyweight division, the fact that Cyril isn't as strong as Francis might also tip the scales in Jones' favor, giving him the advantage. This fight is definitely going to be one for the record books, and we're all for it. In other news, just like Ngannou, Jones has also been having disputes over contracts, with Dana White claiming Jones asked for a $30 million payout to go up against Ngannou. Of course, Jones denied Dana's accusation, claiming that he never brought up a $30 million deal. Something's definitely fishy. First Ngannou, now Jones. What's going on, Dana? Next up, Cyril Gane's reaction to fighting Jones. Gane is still learning a lot while working in different ways. He didn't make his MMA debut until 2018, which was 7 years after Jones initially won a UFC title. When Jones picked up the pace, Gane was impressed with his skill as he developed into possibly one of the best fighters in the sport's history. Gane has always wanted to fight someone like Jones, and as he gets ready for their fight in March, he's super excited to test his skills against the #1 pound-for-pound fighter. Jon Jones was one of Gane's favorite fighters when he first started watching UFC, and he grew to appreciate him even more once he turned pro in MMA. Plus, he genuinely loves a fighter with a diverse skill set like Jon Jones, so facing him is nothing short of an honor for him because, in his opinion, Jones is the GOAT. Jones has had an extraordinary career, so we can't blame him either. Although Gane is a youngish fighter, he has passion, and it has always been his goal to compete against a GOAT. Naturally, going up against somebody like Jon Jones is ridiculous for him. Not to mention, Gane is lucky to get a second title shot after losing his first attempt against Ngannou. Who knows? Maybe Gane's the one who could hand Jones his first real defeat, because the only loss on Jones' record is a disqualification in a fight he was clearly winning against Matt Hamill. Finally, is Dana White actually underpaying fighters? With some well-known fighters speaking out against the current pay system, and YouTuber-turned-boxer Jake Paul making it his personal life mission to stir up the UFC president over the subject, White has come under fire for the UFC's fighter compensation on countless occasions over the last few years. The UFC will never change, according to White, who has consistently refused to talk about the issue while denying that fighters are underpaid. But the truth is, this subject isn't going to go away, especially after athletes like Tyron Woodley earn more money boxing Jake Paul than he did during his whole UFC career. Not to mention with Ngannou potentially leaving the UFC, this puts Dana White under even more fire for not paying his fighters enough. Until now, White has definitely managed a successful business. Even throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the organization has bragged about shattering its financial records consistently. But still, at the end of the day, the fighters still only receive around 20% of the company's annual revenue, which is nothing compared to other sports leagues, where that percentage is usually around 50%. But it's all white noise for Dana at this point. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think it was right for Ngannou to not renew his UFC contract? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.